So at this point in your journey, let's say you've done everything right. You've bootstrapped your company and found problem solution fit. Then you raised a little money from friends and family on your way to founder problem fit. Then maybe you got into an accelerator program where you made some key connections and raised more money from angel investors. And now, congratulations, you've done one of the hardest things in the startup world. You've achieved product market fit. This means your product is out in the universe and people are using it, which is a huge deal, but even then it doesn't guarantee success. You now have to turn your attention to the next big milestone, making sure that the economics of your product and business make sense for scale. In other words, you got to put yourself on a path to increase revenue significantly over time. Which brings us to the next step in our fundraising journey: business model market fit. At this point, pre-seed funding will no longer do. You're going to need some bigger checks, and it's time to raise your seed round. Right up top, let's get started by looking at some of the data we have here at Carta. Based on tens of thousands of companies on our platform, the typical seed round tends to look like this. So as you can see here, angel investors still play a pretty big part in these funding rounds, although at this stage, the raise amounts are going to be a lot bigger, at anywhere from $500,000 to $5 million. So the angel investors you do go after will likely be the bigger fish who invest larger amounts, which we sometimes call super angels. At this stage, which typically lasts from month 16 to about month 31, investors tend to be professional investors who devote most, if not all, of their professional time and energy into investing in startups. And angels at this stage tend to be more active investors, meaning they'll want to keep a closer eye on you and your company, have a say in big strategic decisions, and give a lot of advice. Now, obviously, the advice part should be welcome, since angel investors at this stage are often experienced former entrepreneurs who have been successful at building their own companies. So when they tell you their experience, be sure to listen. Now, as you may have noticed, seed rounds can also bring in other investors, venture capital investors, who uniquely specialize in doing seed rounds. Sometimes we call these micro VCs. So you put these two new sources of deeper pocketed money together, and all of a sudden you're talking about a much bigger funding round. Like we said, anywhere from about $500,000 all the way up to $5 million. Now, during this phase, the company should be using their resources and runway to really dig down on the nitty-gritty details of their operations and finances, again, finding business model market fit. This means answering a number of tough questions, like how much is it costing us to produce each product or unit of service? How much are we selling our product for? What is the demand? How do we measure demand? And how can we optimize revenue? And what are all of our drivers of revenue, not to mention which of them are the most efficient? At this point, you're getting into some of the thorniest, most fascinating, and when you start to figure it out, the most incredibly fulfilling aspects of building a company. And because the problems you're solving are becoming more difficult, the amounts you gotta raise to keep solving them are getting bigger as well. Okay, you've now got a solid overview of pre-seed and seed funding sources and how much money companies typically raise at each different stage. It's now time to dig into the hard stuff, the nuts and bolts of early stage fundraising. Our first topic is gonna be one of the most common and popular questions that we hear from startup founders. How do you know how much money to raise, and how do you know when to raise it? So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next lesson. So when you're ready, click on over and we'll see you there.